Okay, this is day 122, part 3, and the obvious question is, if there is a Hezbollah type operation going on in Florida, and somebody like an Oliver, a Joaquin Oliver, and a team of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 was doing the drugs down to Venezuela, a team like Oliver, not Oliver himself, but if that was happening, where would they be going? I mean, the Awans obviously had weapons going to Iran, they had weapons going to Benghazi. With the Libya situation, they had weapons going to Syria. They had weapons going to try the Turkish coup, and they've had weapons going to Honduras in the past, in 2009, for Hillary's first coup. Where's the next coup? Well, he's and Krylova. So interesting, no one is mentioning it. And if there really was, and here's the plant, if there really was a gas attack like here, noxious fumes and so forth, if this happened on September the 11th, now remember, September the 11th, 2 years before, Christopher Stevens was killed. September 11th before that, we had a sort of an event occur in, I believe it was Libya. And all around the world, we've had September 11th attacks, with bombings and so forth. So certainly, this is a significant event here in 2014. What did the FBI do, Andy McCabe do, as the head of terrorism? Strokes, Priestap, the gang, Comey, etc. All these people are in power. What did they do about this? Now, Rod Rosenstein just signed an indictment, but Rosenstein was in the Justice Department, as well as all these current cast of characters in Uranium One. What did they do about this noxious plume, or these Russians that set off this noxious plume? You haven't heard anything at all in the news about it. Okay.